Groveland. Do you know what's up? We do. I'm Beth Greenhagen.
And I'm Rich York.
And we're back to bring you hyper-local news and information for and about Groveland. We're going to be taking a break for the summer, and we anticipate being back in September. In the meantime, we have so much to tell you. And if you watch all the way to the end, we have a surprise.
First up, let's talk about election results for the town election on May 5th. 594 of the total 5,549 registered voters, or 11% of us, voted. Groveland has a new select board member. Steve Baker campaigned hard and won his seat handedly, and he already participated in the first select board meeting. In another hotly contested seat, Jennifer Peterson ran a very successful campaign for town clerk. We can attest to her speedy responsiveness in her new position. Joe Demore will be town moderator again next year. Kathy Prunier won re-election to the Housing Authority. Our own Beth Greenhagen is a new school committee member, and Rock Dower pulled off a write-in campaign to keep his seat on the Cemetery Commission. In a surprise write-in win, Dr. Bill Dark has accepted his write-in win for 3-year assessor term and has already been sworn in. You can now find official election results on the town clerk's website at grovelandma.com. We heartily congratulate all the winners, and we're grateful to everyone who contributed to a worthy campaign season.
Thanks, Rich. And now for an update from Town Hall.
Stephanie Bartelt here from What's Up Groveland. Just coming into Town Hall, into the back meeting room here. And who do I find?
Hello, my name is Becky Boucher, and I am one of your select board members. I am here holding office hours so that I can hear from residents. My plan is to hold them monthly. They'll be held before the first select board meeting each month, so I will be in this conference room from 5 to 6. The point of this is to hear from residents. I want to hear your questions, your comments, your concerns. I could go to social media or I can meet you in the street, but I wanted to be somewhere where you knew where I would be. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Becky, just tell me, do people have to sign up in advance or just show up? Is it first come, first serve?
Yeah, so for right now, I am doing first come, first serve. I will have people sign up here, provide their email address and their street address. This way I can provide any follow-up information that's needed. If it gets busy, I will have a sign up ahead of time, but for right now, just come on over.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
GCN has also learned that Groveland's newest select board member, Steve Baker, will be holding office hours too. Check it out. We have a wrap-up of town meeting to talk about too. About 120 residents gathered at Elmer Bagnall School on Monday, April 28th for Groveland's annual town meeting. The meeting started on time at 6:30 without the usual scramble to find people to help make a quorum. The warrant was dense with 48 articles, including several wordy town bylaw changes. Amazingly, all 48 articles passed. The meeting ended at 9:19 p.m., lasting only 2 hours and 49 minutes. The most notable approval was for the MBTA Section 3A Zoning Overlay District, which easily passed. After Planning Board Chair DJ McNulty's detailed explanation, most residents' questions about the sometimes contentious regulations seemed to be answered. Additional bylaw changes that were enacted included a town administrator bylaw, changes to the Council on Aging bylaw, changes to the Community Preservation Act bylaw, and changes to the Battery Energy Storage Systems bylaw. New bylaws were also enacted for accessory dwelling units, driveway regulations, and flood zones. Residents later passed a $24.2 million budget and a $44 million water filtration plant funded by ratepayers with no dissent. Moderator Joe Demore attributed the smooth meeting to thorough preparation, including GCN news coverage, his community TV shows on the issues, and a display of articles on screen at the front of the meeting stage. Town Administrator Rebecca Oldham thought the meeting went so smoothly because there was a lot of preparation and clear communication ahead of time. The messaging around the MBTA compliance emphasized the practical benefits and made it clear that this was a state mandate we needed to address. That helped frame the article as a necessary step rather than a controversial choice. Overall, Odom felt the residents trusted the work that had gone into all proposals, which contributed to the smooth discussion and broad support at the town meeting.
And not only that, Groveland will soon be getting new recycling carts. New 96-gallon recycling carts were approved at the town meeting in the 2026 budget. The wheel carts will make it easier to get recycling materials to the curb each week, keep materials dry and contained, and encourage recycling. The Trash and Recycling Committee emphasizes that the more that we divert anything that can be diverted, like recycling or compost, from the waste stream, the more we save on our trash disposal. The town administrator, Rebecca Oldham, announced at a recent select board meeting that she expects to start delivery of the recycling carts to every household starting this September.
The Friends of the Groveland Library will be hosting a summer concert this year. On Monday, July 14th from 6 to 8, you can grab a chair or a blanket and listen to The Last Duo perform right on the lawn in front of the library and town hall. The Last Duo is a new musical collaboration of veteran performers Dan Sorois and Greg Decato. The Friends of the Groveland Library will be selling refreshments as well. And guess what, viewers? Our own historian Lee Thomas has a timely story on the origin of the library for you in this episode. Lee?
Thank you. And here is what was Up Groveland. On April 14, 1861, the American Civil War began. On April 18, 1861, the 19th Massachusetts Infantry Unit began to form up, recruiting young men from the factory towns along the Merrimack River. One of the first people to enlist was John Gregory Bishop Adams, a 19-year-old from Groveland. He was intelligent and well-liked, and by March 1, 1862, he had achieved the rank of sergeant, and only 5 months later the rank of lieutenant in Company L of the 19th. The life-changing moment came for Lieutenant Adams at the Battle of Fredericksburg that December from 11th to the 13th. The battle turned out to be one of the most catastrophic losses for the Union forces in the entire Civil War. The 19th was sent to assault a position called Mary's Heights on the 13th and walked into a slaughter. The regimental flag bearer and the Union flag bearer were killed almost immediately. The men who replaced them were quickly wounded, as were the men who replaced them. The officers realized that they had to get the survivors to cover, but without the flags, there was no way to lead them in the right direction. Knowing where to go, Lieutenant Adams grabbed both flags and led the unit to cover. His actions saved many lives, and he was recommended for and received the Congressional Medal of Honor. He was one of 7 men from the 19th who won that award during the war. In the last year of the Civil War, he was promoted to captain, but was soon captured and was a POW from June 1864 to March 1865. After the war, he served as the postmaster in Lynn, the chief of customs in Boston, a member of the Electoral College in 1868, the deputy warden of the Concord State Prison, and the sergeant-at-arms in the Massachusetts State House. When he died in 1900, he left $5,000 in his will for the establishment of a library in Groveland in 1917. Alfred Langley, a successful businessman in the community, donated an additional $5,000 with the stipulation that the library be opened before his death. On February 16, 1918, the Langley Adams Library was opened in the brick building on Main Street that is now a private residence. The first librarian was Miss Mary Stickney. It was not Groveland's first library. In June 1879, a reading room called the Hale Free Library was opened in the Hale Building, now Washington Hall, upstairs from the post office. At first, it was only provided newspapers and magazines, but in 1889, the Reverend Copping of the Congregational Church donated his collection and money for the purchase of more books. Eager to make sure that money continued to come in for the purchase of books for the library, he pushed for state legislation that would provide funds. The legislation that was created promoted the idea of the towns using the proceeds from dog licensing fees to be made part of the annual library budget, which continued to be the case in Groveland into the 1970s. In 1890, the libraries moved to the Page Building, the prominent building at the intersection across from the bridge. In 1900, there was a fire in the building, and teachers and students from the high school rushed to the blaze and were able to save 500 books. The George Building was built on the site, housing Boynton's Grocery, Benson's Cigars, and Crowley and Kimball's Meat Market on the first floor, and the library on the second. In 1928, the library received another $3,000 from the Langley estate, and in 1929 from the Parker estate for opening a children's room with the stipulation that the portrait of the donor's grandfather be displayed in the library where it still hangs today. In 1938, Miss Ann Balch donated $3,000 for the expansion of the library's collection. The current Langley Adams Library was opened in 1978. It's very clear from its earliest history that providing an opportunity for the citizens to have access to reading was important to the people of Groveland.
Lee, thanks as always for some historical perspective. Our library is such a great resource for the town and holds so much history. In more local performance news, Forge Muse Productions is holding auditions for 2 new productions, The Rainbow Fish and The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, on Tuesday, June 17th at 4 p.m. at Veasey Park. Fresh off the recent popular run of Hadestown at Veasey Park, Forge Muse is a fun avenue for those of you with the chops to get yourself out on stage. Performances are planned for August 15th through 17th, with rehearsals held Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Program cost to join the production is $300.
Veasey Park is also hosting Rubbish to Runway, refashion show again this year. Melissa Montello has organized designers and models from all over the region to flaunt their creativity in making garments by reusing materials that would otherwise be discarded. The intergenerational show is supported by the Mass Cultural Council with grants from the Groveland and Georgetown Cultural Councils as well. According to its flyers, the show promotes inclusivity, body positivity, and sustainable practices, while also supporting Veasey Memorial Park. The show is taking place at Veasey Park on Friday and Saturday, June 27th and 28th. We recently sent Elaine Tamesian Muse to Veasey Park to check up on the progress of Groveland's Miyawaki forest. Let's watch.
I wonder if Diane's home. Diane, are you there?
I am. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Diane. I came to see Veasey Park and the property you've developed here.
This is called the People's Forest.
I love that.
Come on in.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me today. Hello and welcome to Groveland Community News. My name is Elaine Tamesian Muse, and today we will be meeting with Dianne Plantamura. Thank you for being with us today, Dianne. When I think of you, and I've known you for a while, I think of Veasey Memorial Park. Today I look forward to helping our viewers learn about you and all that you've done for our town property. So first of all, we're sitting in this beautiful area, and I'd like to have you talk to the viewers about where we are right now.
So this is the rewilding project that I envisioned about 4 or 5 years ago. Prior to that, I had been managing a pollinator native plant garden just on the other side of the forest. So that started about 15 years ago. And we had various amounts of money here and there. It became a Massachusetts Master Gardener project, so I had help along the way every summer to weed and plant some more, blah, blah, blah. One year, we had no money, and we had offered people if they wanted to buy a tree, and we'd put a plaque under the tree. So we got 3 folks to do that, and we planted 3 redbud trees just outside here. And I was looking at them one year, about 3-4 years ago, and noticed that a bittersweet vine had come out from this part of the forest and was wrapping itself around my new trees. And it was like 3 feet up in the air, stuck out and wrapped itself around these new trees. And I went ballistic.
Now, just for our viewers who might not know, what is the problem with bittersweet?
Bittersweet is not only on the Massachusetts invasive species list, but it can choke and kill native trees. It has in the fall those orange and yellow berries that people used to collect to make wreaths out of. But doing that allows the berries to plant themselves everywhere, and of course the birds like those berries and they plant them everywhere as well. But bittersweet is very hard to eradicate and pops up everywhere, and it becomes a thicket. You see it along the highway.
Yeah, I have.
It's just a thicket, and it chokes trees, and it's just a terribly invasive vine. Anyway, so I was looking at back then when it was coming out at my newly planted redbud trees, I was looking at the area behind it, and it looked not like the forest that we see back here with trees and ground cover, and it was a thicket. It was so thick that you could not walk in it. Massive amounts of thick vines that were 90% invasive on the Massachusetts list. So I spent a year writing a proposal to the Conservation Commission about rewilding this area. It's 9,000 square feet that we identified, and presented it to the Conservation Commission. They presented it to the town, and a year and a half ago we got some funding to start the project. The first thing that we did was we hired Steve Collins here in town, and he took out 6 dump truck loads of invasive vines.
Wow.
Out of, just this area. So that was the beginning. And in the process, we discovered, as Steve was up in these 2 trees that are in the center here, we discovered that these 2 trees in the center that we never knew existed because they were wrapped up with bittersweet vines and choked from all sides. They are American elm trees, which is an amazing thing to find here in this patch of forest.
Well, we used to have that at Elm Park, but weren't they all killed?
Dutch elm disease killed 95% of all the American elm trees in this country.
Wow.
So there's an organization in southern New Hampshire, the Liberty Tree Association, and they developed a resistant variety, and that's what we have now in the center of town.
Right.
And they're beautiful.
They are.
They're amazing. And thankfully, a former resident of Groveland wrote the grant and got that.
That was Jennifer Munson.
It was
wasn't
Jen
it?
Munson.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was amazing.
It was an amazing. So people like her are inspiring to me. Right. And so if she can do that, well, so I wrote this up, and the town began the funding, and then subsequently I needed more funding because it's a big project, and wrote grants to New England Biolabs was very generous, the Groveland Garden Club was generous, and individual donations from friends and that I knew had some money, and also people in town were very generous with little bitty funds. So the plan, I had a team of members from the Master Gardeners, and we met for 6 months over the winter and decided what trees to purchase, the kind of planting we would do. We decided to plant 2/3 of this area with a Miyawaki forest method. Dr. Miyawaki was a Japanese botanist who began this method of planting native trees, and he's been very successful around the world. It's only recently come to the United States as a possible way to plant, to rewild an area and become, so that it can become a forest, because a forest is not just trees. It's a conglomeration of trees and shrubs and fungi and animals and birds and lizards and snakes and all the critters and tiny critters that eat the soil, that break apart the soil. That's what a forest is. So we wanted to create that kind of thing. And Dr. Miyawaki wrote that you could do this with his method 10 times faster, and the trees would grow 30 times healthier. So it was very inspiring to find that out. There's a whole book written about this method of doing this. So we followed the prescription in the book. We planted in April 2024. We had 160 volunteers that signed up, and you were one of them.
I was. I'm so happy I was.
And so were every friend that I have, and many people from Groveland. Boy Scouts, Girl Scout troops, all of them. Over 2 days, we started with a dedication by 2 Native American folks, leaders of the Abenaki tribe. And they were wonderful and talked about our need to preserve our earth. And we planted 1,600 trees and shrubs over those 2 days in this large section. And it was an amazing accomplishment, truly, and I'm very proud of everybody who was part of that. So this is year 2, and I'm sure you'll be able to see the growth in some of these trees.
For sure.
This year we tackled, well, also last year we planted 500 perennials behind this wall. This wall was also what we found when we cleared out this area. And so it lent itself perfectly to my plan to have this area be an educational area for the community. So we used the wall, we made a little amphitheater in front of it, and the last few weeks we had a speaker series, and both very well attended, about loving a forest and about edible wild plants, and people loved it. So I'm hoping maybe we'll do it again next year.
I hope so.
So stay tuned on the Friends of Veasey website. So Miyawaki demands that we prepare the soil. The soil here was pretty trashy because this was a retaining wall for farm equipment. And the farm equipment ran over this area over and over and over again, compacting the soil. So we had to add a lot of compost, and below the 6 inches of compost, it was like hardpan. But we then planted through that and also gave a couple of sprays of enhancing fungi and natural materials to
kind of give it a jump start.
To give it a jump, to give the new roots a jump start. Yep.
Wow.
And the weeds love the jump start too. So we have lots of them, and we're always looking for people to come help weed because we got to keep it down.
And we'll get into that because there are many opportunities to volunteer here at Veasey Park, which brings me to my next question. How long have you been, they call them the Friends of Veasey, right? This organization of people that are dedicated themselves to working on maintaining and improving the property.
Yep. So I was asked to be a friend on the board maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. Before that, I was peripherally involved. I became sort of the horticultural ask person for most things up here, which was too big a hat until I retired, and then I had a little bit more space. So now I'm an officer on the Friends, and this is my project up here. I'd like to take on more of the park, but enough is enough right now.
Right.
And I started coming up here with my dog because I live nearby. And that's how, after the town purchased the property, I fell in love with the property. And so this was kind of a obvious thing. Someone had to take care of it.
Right. Now you're also involved in the wild and native gardens, the perennial gardens, correct?
You mean here?
Yes.
Yes.
Would
yes.
you like to talk a little bit about that as well?
I think I said at the beginning, that's how I got started. I noticed that this area out front, the town was mowing the central square like a room, but the edges were a disaster. The edges were invasive vines and poison ivy and things that you didn't want to look at. So it just so happened that year in one of the garden club meetings, Mr. Blanchett, I can't remember his first name, he's passed on now. He gave a lecture on native plants, and he said to us, if anyone wants my help, I'll give it to you for free. Come to me and blah, blah, blah. So my husband and I came and mapped out the area, grid by grid, how much space we needed, or we had, and went to see Mr. Blanchett in Carlisle, where he was at the time. And he gave me a diagram for what to put where.
Really?
All these native plants. He was fabulous. I spent the whole afternoon with him. And so that was the beginning of the first 100 feet of pollinator native gardens. This was almost 15 years ago.
Wow.
So this
I
was
didn't realize
before native plants became shishi, you know?
Right, right. And if you haven't been to the garden, you really do need to check that out as well. This has come up several times, and I know this about you, that you're a master gardener. So you have an amazing knowledge of gardens. And I wanted to ask you a couple of things about plants. And one is, why are native plants important? Like, why should people buy native plants instead of that immediate gratification of something they can put in the ground and enjoy for the summer?
It's an excellent question that we all should be attuned to. Native plants have evolved with pollinators for millions of years. And so in order to get food for birds, for instance, if you want to follow that trajectory,
right.
Birds, when they're nesting, need like thousands and thousands of caterpillars per clutch.
Yeah.
Something I think it's around 9,000 caterpillars per clutch. It's really outlandishly amazing. And in this book called Nature's Best Hope, you can read all about more specifically about that by Doug Ptolemy. He describes in easy-to-read detail why native plants are so crucial to our environment. We have had so many plants pushed out, so many natives pushed out by these invasive vines, and you see that everywhere you go. And that decimates the caterpillar and moth and butterfly, therefore, populations, so that the bird populations decline because they can't get enough food for the babies.
Right.
So that's one effect.
Okay.
Native plants just provide a lot more. They provide stability to the soil. They provide carbon sink into the soil. They secure water so that water doesn't run off. New England Wildflower Society in Framingham, Native Plant Trust, they call themselves now, is a great resource for finding out what can grow here, what's best to grow here, and they sell them as well.
Okay.
So we buy some plants from them.
So there's another word that I'd like you to help educate us a little bit about. I think you've already touched upon it a bit, but the word or the concept of biodiversity. Yep. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So many people think when you ask them what is a forest, they'll say, oh, trees. let's plant some trees. Well, that is not a forest. A forest is an accumulation of not just trees, but shrubs and ground covers and animals, all kinds of animals, including the ones that eat the dead wood that falls down. We need to leave the dead wood because the beetles and all the other critters that eat the wood turn it into soil. And that's what we're hoping here. We don't expect all these trees to live. We expect some of them to die and we'll leave them on the forest floor. Animals and bugs and insects will take care of it and create the forest floor so that we have a healthy forest, so that when we take the netting down in a few years, which we have to have up because of the deer, when we take it down, lots of animals will make this their home. And that's a forest. It's a biodiverse compilation of everything you can imagine. Leaves, wood chips, dead wood, live trees growing, sub-canopy trees, and people enjoying it. Yeah, so we have a couple of paths through the center here, and we expect to put some signs up and hopefully some benches so that in a few years people can come in and sit and enjoy the quiet, the birds. There are so many birds up here, and that's part of the charm and the beauty of the place.
It sure is. It really is. It's very calming in this crazy world.
It is.
So just a couple of other questions about what you personally appreciate about Groveland. How many years have you been here?
Oh, let's see. I think 35, 36, something like that. Yeah, I love Groveland. I grew up, only half an hour from here, 20 minutes from here, but I'd never heard of Groveland when I was growing up. We used to drive through Georgetown to get to the beach, but never heard of Groveland. So it's a wonderful community. I love the folks, so many folks who volunteer and contribute to every aspect of this small town. And it's really nice to know a lot of people, you guys included, over the years through the schools and and then branching out from there. So I've had a lot of support and a lot of help with volunteers coming up here. We're always looking for more volunteers because not too many people like to weed a lot, but it's an important thing we have to get through in the summer.
And you definitely have provided a community. This is definitely a community, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
What advice would you give to Groveland residents, and what do you feel like, in your opinion, they should cherish?
Well, when I was writing this grant to the Conservation Commission, this application, I found out that Groveland was named Groveland because of its trees, Groveland. And that just made a big impression on me. And I think we all should remember that we do have an amazing treasure in this town, and we should protect all of the forests that we have. And also, I think people in their own yards, the book that I mentioned, Nature's Best Hope, he talks about creating a national park in your own backyard.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so it's he calls it the homegrown national park. Because if we depend only on our conserved national parks, it's not enough land to bring back birds, to have critters, to have nature. And so we have to foster biodiversity in our own yards. We have to think about planting native plants. It doesn't have to be 100% native plants. I think that the percentages, if you can go to 70%, that would be great.
Really? Okay.
So he talks about shrinking your lawn a little bit. You don't have to shrink it entirely, but putting some more native plants along the edges, maybe planting a tree. An oak tree is the oak trees are the most important tree to provide caterpillar growth.
Really? Okay.
Thankfully, we have a lot of oak trees in Groveland and in the surrounding area. But there are lots of there are beautiful things we can plant, and the native plant industry is growing, thankfully, finally.
Yeah.
It's not always real easy, but when you go to a nursery, ask for natives. Don't buy things that are native-are or species that are directed from natives. You know, they will try to sell you something that is prettier or lasts longer, but the birds and the bees don't recognize those things.
They don't read the labels, do they?
They don't read the labels. So.
Yeah. I was also thinking when you were talking about, because I know my husband and I are trying to do a little less lawn, and that's a process too, but you know I see signs on lawns where people are treating their lawns with chemicals, and the possibility of maybe less lawn where you can enjoy what you have might also take away some of the toxicity that people were putting into the ground without intending to hurt anything.
Right. When you fertilize and or use chemicals on your lawn, most of that stuff seeps out into the water supply.
Yeah.
Very little stays to help the grass grow. In fact, you really don't need any fertilizer for your grass, for your lawn, because grass and clover take nitrogen out of the air and provide all the nitrogen you need. Wow. I have never fertilized our lawn. It's 35 years old and it's green as can be. It's fine.
Yep.
And you don't need to water it either, but people do.
So as we come to the close of our time together, what brings the most joy to your life right now?
Well, beside my kids, so I love this place, this forest that we're creating. It just gives me a lot of joy to see this. I mean, do you remember what this looked like when we first planted? It was a barren land with sticks.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So I had faith that it would work, but nonetheless it was scary.
Yeah, sure. A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, yeah, but a lot of support. So,
is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like our viewing audience to know or to be aware of, or anything?
Come up and see us.
Okay.
You know, come anytime. If you want to get in, you have to let me know. I'm here with Master Gardeners every other Friday, starting next Friday, unless it's pouring rain. But we've had people come and weed in the rain too. We have some dedicated volunteers. Come up and see for yourself what is going on here, and see what you can do in your own yards and with your own families.
And you would show people what to do if they came up to volunteer. They don't have to have any prior knowledge.
Oh, you need no knowledge. Okay. Everybody knows what grass looks like. Just pull the grass.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. So thank you very much for your time and for sharing your story with Groveland Community News today. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
The transformation at Veasey Park is remarkable. Thank you, Dianne, for the work you put in, and thank you to all the volunteers and workers. School's out soon. Pentucket High School seniors are graduating on Friday, June 6th. Congratulations to all our seniors, and sending all good wishes for your future endeavors. The rest of Pentucket middle school and high school classes have 2 fire days to make up, in addition to the snow day, according to Dr. Bartholomew. So their last day is Wednesday, June 18th. Elementary students finish up on Monday, June 16th after just 1 snow day this year. Here's a fun new video from Pentucket's video production class.
Hi, I'm Callie White.
I'm Jesse Krzyzak.
I'm Genevieve D'Angelo.
I'm Cordelia Tubbs.
And I'm Danielle Ellis.
And we are going to be telling you the history about the Groveland schools. Let's dive in. The Lenoret Schoolhouse was a one-room school that was built in 1865. It is now home to the Groveland Garden Club and is still its original location on Broad Street in Savaryville. It was used until 1956, but was required a relocation when the population started to grow. It was owned by the town of Groveland and was leased to the Garden Club.
It was saved from getting demolished in 1965 and is now a living exhibit. It has its own original backboards and floors. It is one of the 2 historic structures in Groveland. The other is the Washington Hall. In 2009, the Community Preservation Act funds approved it for the restoration.
Dr. Elmer S. Bagnell was a school that opened in 1964. It was named after Dr. Elmer S. Bagnell. He was a physician who served in Groveland for 56 years. The school opened with 12 classrooms and added 12 more in 1966. About Dr. Elmer S. Bagnell, he was known for his practice for being named Massachusetts' first General Practitioner of the Year in 1949. He practiced medicine and was the namesake of the Dr. Elmer S. Bagnell. He served as a president of the Massachusetts Medical Society.
This school opened in 1956 after smaller schools in the area closed down. Enrollment soon went down in 1983. The Shanahan School was demolished in 1984 after the students were transferred to Bagnell School. It is now a field called Shanahan Field where kids can play. The South Grammar Schools were located at the corner of Washington Street and Langley Avenue. It was at the site of the South Groveland Fire Station. There were 2 schools on the site. The larger grammar school was built in 1890 for 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. The one-room schoolhouse was built in 1870 and housed 4th and 5th grades. The one-room schoolhouse wasn't being used and burned down in 1936.
Now we're going to interview some people who went to Groveland School.
So I'm here with Mr. Lovett, and I'm going to be interviewing him about what school he went to. So what school did you go to?
So my elementary school was the Bagnell School, also known as the Dr. Elmer S. Bagnell School.
And when did you go there? Like how long?
I was there in the late 80s, early 90s, and then to about mid to late 90s.
And did you like it?
I loved it. Yeah, it was good. I had great teachers, great classmates. Yeah.
Nice. Perfect.
Thanks, guys. That was great. We really enjoy watching your work and appreciate everything that you put into making it. Looking for more creativity on display? Join the festivities for Haverhill's first Pride Parade, taking place on Saturday, June 7th. It serves as the official kickoff event for Haverhill's June Art Walk. It all starts at City Hall at 12:30 with a keynote speaker and pride flag raising, with the parade beginning at 1 o'clock and the Haverhill Art Walk from 2 to 4. The organizers are excited to make history by bringing pride to Haverhill. Groveland's Council on Aging is also getting into the pride spirit. The COA is hosting 2 discussions in June. Join a conversation facilitated by social worker Ro Fiore about growing as allies at Veasey Park on Wednesday, June 25th at 1 p.m. to learn more about what LGBTQ means and how to talk about it. And on Monday, June 2nd, at Town Hall's main meeting room, a discussion will be guided by a book called The Stonewall Generation, LGBTQ Elders on Sex, Activism, and Aging, shares their stories of LGBTQ elders who lived through the Stonewall riots and the decades of change since then. Many thanks to the Council on Aging for hosting 2 powerful and important engagements.
It was an exciting April night at the Bagnell School as the community gathered for a concert sponsored by the Friends of Groveland's Council on Aging. The occasion was a visit by the North Shoremen, a men's chorus affiliated with the Barbershop Harmony Society and based in Beverly. Founded in 1938 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Barbershop Harmony Society is the largest all-male singing organization in the world. The group of about 40 men dazzled and the enthusiastic crowd with their group harmony of old-time favorites as well as contemporary tunes. There were breakout groups singing in barbershop quartet style. The group invited any interested men to join them at their monthly meeting in Danvers to sing along and potentially join the chorus.
The Groveland Conservation Commission approved an Adopt a Space policy at its May meeting. The program will enhance the town through community involvement in maintaining public spaces, particularly those spaces under the Commission's control. Individuals, businesses, civic groups, and other organizations can participate. Examples of donations can include plantings or maintenance on trails, enhancements at trail entrances, installations of park benches or picnic tables, or garden spots along property roadways. The Commission has already approved 2 locations at Veasey Park to be managed by Lovely Earth Gardening, a local landscaping company. Contact the Commission if this sounds interesting to you at 978-556-7205 or go to the Conservation Commission's page at grovelandma.com.
The dam under Salem Street, near the Washington Street and Salem Street intersection, is failing. The Massachusetts Office of Dam Safety has long considered the old dam a hazard, but no funds have been available to address it. Unfortunately, over the past year, the culvert under the roadway has appeared to crack, allowing water to weaken the head wall of the outlet. Several sinkholes had to be repaired. The Groveland Highway Department has been monitoring the dam and culvert on a weekly basis to ensure the safe use of Salem Street. Over the past month, Groveland Town Administrator Rebecca Oldham secured funding combined with our share of Chapter 90 funds to repair the dam. Repairs include placing a sleeve in the existing pipe and reinforcing the walls of the outlet to prevent further degradation. The roadway will be repaved. The work requires review and a permit from the Conservation Commission. The Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program must be involved because of the proximity of Meadow Pond and protected habitat. This repair will allow the street to be safely used for at least 5 years until funding can be allocated for a complete rebuild. The dam controls Johnson's Creek, which flows between Meadow Pond and Johnson's Pond. The repairs are expected to begin in June. After the death in early May of a Groveland River otter crossing the street over the dam, Oldham agreed to place wildlife crossing signs in this section of Salem Street to help warn drivers and protect local river otters, beavers, and turtles who sadly don't always make it safely across the highly traveled street.
Next, we have a special segment to share with you about the Valley Screw Superfund site, brought to you by someone who very likely knows more about Valley Screw than just about anyone else, our own co-producer, Mike Dempsey. Mike has done even more investigating for this story. Let's take a look at what really happened there 50 years ago.
Love Canal, one of the worst environmental disasters in this country, became known in 1978 as a result of over 12,000 chemical and hazardous waste sites in the country. Congress passed and President Carter signed the Superfund law in December of 1980. Until then, the government had no way to deal with all the ongoing contamination nationwide. This had an impact even here in Groveland. The abandoned building we are all familiar with, located at 64 Washington Street, was built as a storehouse for the woolen mills owned by Arthur Veasey in the 1920s. A similar building was once located across the street where the Madison Avenue development is. When the mills were closed in the 1940s, the many brick buildings behind 46 Washington Street were torn down. 46 Washington Street is the last remaining brick mill building. Eventually, the Madison Avenue building was removed and the site was sold to developers, leaving the last storehouse standing unused for several years. In 1963, local entrepreneurs bought the building and opened a machine shop where metal parts, screws, and cable connectors were made. The company, later known as Valley Manufactured Products, operated in the building from 1963 until it closed in 2001. In 1979, during a routine annual water testing of the Groveland wells by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Quality Engineering, now known as Mass DEP, Hazardous substances were identified in the water. Further testing identified levels of chemicals trichloroethylene, methyl chloride, and arsenic in the water. At that point, 2 polluted wells in South Groveland, number 1 and number 2, were shut down. Now we had a real problem. Beyond figuring out where the contamination came from, we had to find a new source of our drinking water. As test wells placed upstream from the wells continued to reveal increased levels of the chemicals in the water, the Board of Health put together a well protection committee to investigate the cause and determine a solution. The committee consisted of 5 town leaders, including John Osborne, who became the chair and chief negotiator. Test results indicated that the potential sources of contamination seems to be 2 other companies on Salem Street and the Valley Manufactured Products plant. The committee began negotiations with the companies. However, with more testing, the Valley Manufactured Products plant seemed to be the largest contributor to the contamination. In 1980, Valley offered the town $60,000 to clean up the chemical, but the committee wouldn't hear of it and took all 3 potential polluters to court. After an 11-year effort, the companies finally settled with the town for $1 million. Once the lawyers were paid, the town used the remaining funds to develop a new well, number 4, located along the Merrimack River behind the cemetery. Meanwhile, after the EPA investigated, they issued an administrative order of consent. The U.S. EPA docket number 187-1091 ALC is a legal document issued by the EPA that requires a party to take specific actions to address environmental concerns. It's essentially a settlement agreement where the EPA and the regulated entity agree on the steps needed to resolve a violation of environmental law. The order was signed on September 3rd and 4th by the EPA and Thomas Quinlan, president of the Valley Manufactured Products Company. Small machine shops like Valley Manufactured Products often make small metal parts. Once the parts are cut, they require chemical treatments to clean them of the oil used in the process. Trichloroethylene, a known carcinogen, was the cleaner of choice. Often the parts would later be brightened in an acid bath. When the chemical's ability to clean was finished, they had to be disposed of as waste, and a hauler was paid to take them away. Valley had used these processes at their plant. The document, which was obtained at the Langley Adams Library and is also available on the EPA website, contains a section called Statement of Facts. This section details operations and activities at the site from 1963 until 1985. The common belief is the hazardous chemical contamination came as a result of the accidental release of waste trichloroethylene dumped into a tank that had been improperly installed in the ground without a drain plug. However, the statement of facts signed by the owner reveals much more egregious behaviors by the company. Here are a few examples. Between 1964 and 1972, and possibly as late as 1974, the company released at least 20 gallons of waste oil containing other hazardous substances each month onto the ground at the southern end of the existing building. Between 1964 and 1966, and possibly as late as 1972, the company released at least 3 to 4 55-gallon drums of waste oil containing trichloroethylene and other hazardous substances each year as defoliant on the eastern side of the building and in the area where the parking lot is located. Between 1970 and 1979, the acid bath process was located on an earthen floor in the basement near the compressor room, and the company discharged wastewater from this process into the parking lot. These activities caused the chemicals to seep into the ground and pollute our 2 nearby wells. There was no doubt that what the company did to dispose of their waste was no accident. At the time, these activities placed at least 160 nearby residents' health at risk and endangered adults and children who drank the water. No studies were ever done to measure the effect on Groveland residents. We will never know the full impact of this criminal behavior practiced by the Valley Manufactured Products Company to rid themselves of chemical waste to save money. Eventually, the company shut down all operations in Groveland and closed. The building was abandoned and left to fall apart. The company and owner pay no taxes on the building, and our town is forced to set aside funds every year to cover the unpaid taxes, plus fees, interest, and penalties. This is done because Massachusetts law requires it. After our summer hiatus, we'll tell you more about how the EPA Superfund program cleaned up the site and well number 1, and the restrictions we are still living with on nearby properties. Finally, we'll learn what the future holds to free us all of the awful specter of that collapsing building on Washington Street.
And with that, we come to the end of our show and season. Thanks for joining us on this latest episode of What's Up Groveland. We look forward to new stories to share this fall. Follow our Facebook page, check out our website at gcnnews.net, where you can find links to our shows on the town's Groveland TV YouTube channel. As always, you can find more local news by reading the Town Common and by listening to WHAV 97.9 FM or on their webpage at whav.net. Send us tips and accolades at whatsupgroveland@gmail.com. We'll see you in September. Here's the one last surprise for you.
Okay, go.
You're on a horse. Out in front of you is a kangaroo that you can't keep up with. Beside you is an elephant that's keeping pace with you. Coming up behind you is a ferocious lion. What do you do?
I don't know. What do?
You get off the merry-go-round.
GCN, Groveland's Community News.